But really the goal here is to keep as many properties on the list as possible. This is the process as to how I go about narrowing down a list for an upcoming auction. What we're going to be going through here is Calhoun County, Michigan, and that is in the southern part of the state. So moving on to the county here, let's discuss some of the important points on how to prepare for a property tax auction sale. There'll be 4 to 5 different examples that we pulled off the list of different kinds of properties, and I'll talk about what I think about them and the kind of things that you need to take and look at as you go through the list. Because you're not just looking at 1 or 2 items, you're really looking at 8 to 10 different items on each property as you quickly go through the list. And so what you want to do is, if any of the properties do not make one of the criteria, you would take and eliminate them from the list pretty much immediately. And the biggest one is if you can take $30,000 to the list and opening bid is $32,000 on a property, you can't buy it anyway. So those get knocked off the list. But really the goal here is to keep as many properties on the list as possible. You don't want to be eliminating a ton of properties, because every time I have either a student or I know somebody who's going to the auction and they want one particular property, chances are they'll get outbid on the property and they'll get nothing. So you want to keep your list as long as possible. Another thing that I find that's very, very important is, the properties are in the county's order, not in your order. So you're going to find certain things that you would favor along the list that you would prefer over others. When you get to a property and it meets all your criteria and the price is where you want it to be in the auction, the thing that you need to do the most is bid on that property until it gets out of your price range. And even if towards the end of the auction or somewhere past that, if there are properties that you would prefer more, you may totally get outbid on all of those properties when they get to them. So grab a property when it fits your criteria and it's in your price range. That's the most important thing you can do as a strategy once you get to the auction. Okay, number 1, decide how much money you're going to take to the auction with you. There's a lot of properties that can be in the couple $1,000 range. I've seen houses with a $2,000 price tag at the auction for an opening bid. Vacant land, unless it's an extremely big piece of land, if it's a residential vacant lot, usually opening bid is not much more than $3,000. Okay, so that in itself is a very important step in this whole process. Now choose the areas in the county where you want to own property. Now the first couple of auctions I went to, I didn't know a whole lot about the county I was dealing with. But after you've been there a couple of years and you've spent a lot more time driving around, you're going to have a different opinion of the county than it is the very first time you work the county. So you'll learn where the streets are, you'll learn where the good neighborhoods are, where the not so good neighborhoods are, even where the bad neighborhoods are. So keep all of that in mind. Another issue is if you look at the map for the county and there's a bunch of properties clustered in an area, you definitely want to take and visit as many of those as possible. If you've got one that's way off in the corner and it's a considerable drive to get there and it's only one property, I have a tendency to skip those. A lot of times a neighbor will show up to purchase a property like that, and that it will usually sell either way, even if it's in kind of a out of the way place. Okay, once you've made those kind of decisions, you want to request the list from the county. The most important part once you get the list is to read the rules. If you're not happy with the rules, for whatever reason, move on to another county and get another list. I would say some of the stuff that's the most important when you are reading the rules is what forms of payment do they take? What is the window time that you have to make that payment? And what kind of payments do they take? This is Calhoun County. You have to have $1,000 deposit, and doesn't matter how many properties you buy there, you need one $1,000 deposit. You can either bring it in cash, which I normally do, or you can bring it in the form of a cashier's check. After that, you can either pay for properties with cashier's checks, personal checks, business checks, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, they would take, but American Express will refuse the charge when they figure out that it's property. That's against American Express's rule. You cannot buy property with their credit card. So it has nothing to do with the state, and it has nothing to do with the county. But, the last thing you want to do is have a sale reversed when you've gotten a good property and something that you can make money on. So then you want to choose the price range, the values of the properties that you're interested in bidding on at the auction. Pretty much anything above 0 is my starting point on the low end. And then I will go up to, probably about half of the money that I'm going to take with me on the high end. But if something's a little bit more than that, I still may look at it. And the reason for that is, what if I get totally skunked on every property that was in my price range? There's a good possibility that I still may be able to make another bid before the auction is over. And I will go over that bidding process here right now. The first thing that happens is when you come into an auction that's run by this auction company, which is Title Check Services, okay? You register at the door. They're going to give you a bidder number. They do not take your deposit at the door. I know most auctions do. Ours do not. And then they do need to scan your driver's license. If you're coming from out of the country, ask them if you could use your Canadian driver's license or a passport, or do you need both? I would call ahead and double check on that. So they're basically going to scan your license, hand you a bidder card, and ask for your phone number. And that's all it takes for you to register at the auction. So that's a very quick process. Then you go find a seat, And what I do is they've given you a brand new program, okay? What you've been looking at online was the official program until that day. When they hand you that printed program, that's what they're going to deal with. There could be a couple of redemptions from the night before. There could be a property that was pulled off for some bizarre reason, and I've seen a couple of those happen. So you just got to be flexible. I've also seen them hand out the programs and say, do you remember this number? Because most people have been looking at it online for a month or two. And they're like, we forgot to put it in the program, but we're going to auction it off now anyway. I've seen that happen. Not very often, but I have seen it happen. Now, the good advantage to the auctions where I'm at is there'll be a screen like this directly behind the auctioneer. If it is a property with a building on it, they're going to show you the picture when it comes up for auction. If the property does not have a building on it, some of them will still have photos, some of them will not. So they're going to do everything in their power to, number one, get as much money as they can out of you because of the buyer's premium we talked about yesterday. So the more that the county gets, the bigger the percentage the auction company is going to make and they're going to get. So that's what you want to take, and they're going to do everything in their power to get people to bid up. But if there's one hand raised and nobody else wants to jump in with a second bid, they're going to sell it and they're going to move on. I will tell you that our auctions, in my opinion, are considerably slower than places like LA County.